All right, so get ready, because today we are going to dive deep
Deep.
into a world where impossible is how we like to start things off.
Yeah.
We're talking about special operations leadership,
Yeah. Yeah.
or
sometimes even called commando leadership.
and today we're going to be pulling from this really fascinating audiobook.
Okay.
And we're going to sort of uncover like the history
A history.
and the principles
Yeah.
that make this style of leadership so unique.
Unique. Yeah.
And I think whether you're leading a team,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're tackling a project that feels impossible,
Right.
or you're just fascinated by unconventional paths to success,
Absolutely.
I think you'll find the stuff we're going to talk about today
Yeah.
really, really valuable.
Incredibly valuable.
We're going to be talking about achieving extraordinary results,
Yes.
even when it seems like the odds are totally stacked against you.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, how is that even possible?
Well, and what's so fascinating about this is that it can be applied in so many different contexts. Like,
Yeah.
we're not just talking about,
Yeah.
military tactics here. This is a mindset.
A mindset.
This is a way of approaching any challenge where you might feel outmatched.
Totally. And we're going to be hearing about
Yes.
some pretty wild examples.
Yeah, some incredible
From
examples.
like biblical times to modern business.
Uh-huh.
We're going to be talking about daring raids,
Mhm.
unexpected innovations.
Yeah,
But before we get into like the how,
the how.
I'm kind of curious about the what.
Okay, the what.
Like, what exactly do we mean when we say
Right.
special ops or commando in this context?
Well, the audiobook actually traces this term commando
Commando, yeah.
all the way back to the Boer Wars
Oh, wow.
in South Africa.
Okay.
And the Boers used these small, highly mobile units
Okay.
to kind of disrupt the British Army,
Got it.
which was much larger and way better equipped.
Right.
And they were incredibly effective,
Yeah.
just having this huge impact
Mm.
with these unconventional tactics.
Okay, so is that how that term then kind of evolved into what we think of as special operations now?
Exactly.
Okay.
The core principle is the same.
Okay.
It's achieving what they call relative superiority.
Relative superiority.
And this doesn't mean having more resources.
Okay.
This is about creating a decisive advantage,
Right.
even when you're totally outmatched.
So it's less about brute force
Mhm.
and it's more about strategy and cunning.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about finding your competitors' weaknesses,
Yeah.
exploiting vulnerabilities,
Okay.
and concentrating your resources where they least expect it.
Right.
It's like competitive advantage in the business world.
Right.
You don't have to be the biggest company to succeed.
Right.
You just got to be smarter, faster, more adaptable.
I got you. So instead of a David and Goliath situation,
Uh-huh.
it's more like David outsmarting Goliath.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Great example the book talks about.
Yeah.
It's from Operation Desert Storm. There was this 8-man special forces team.
8 guys.
8 men operating behind enemy lines.
Wow, that's crazy.
Their mission was to gather intel on whether Iraqi forces had detected the main American advance.
Okay.
Now, if they had,
Yeah.
that could have been devastating.
Devastating.
It could have cost thousands of lives
Oh my gosh.
and jeopardized the entire campaign.
Wow.
8 guys against an entire army. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Talk about pressure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, their success must have hinged on a lot more than just bravery.
Absolutely. It relied on meticulous planning,
Okay.
rigorous training,
Right.
and flawless execution of some core principles.
Okay.
And actually, the audiobook dives into 6 specific principles for commando success.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm taking notes.
And these are adapted from William H. McRaven,
Okay.
former Navy SEAL commander.
All right, let's unpack these.
Yeah.
Let's start with number 1,
The first principle is purpose.
purpose.
And I don't just mean a vague sense of doing good. We're talking laser focus.
Laser focus.
On the objective. Absolute clarity on what you're trying to achieve
Got it.
with your team or your project.
So no room for ambiguity. Everyone needs to be on the same page.
Exactly.
Without a clear target,
Yeah,
you're just shooting in the dark.
right.
And the book actually shares this really powerful example.
Oh, yeah.
Colonel Bull Simons.
Okay.
His address to his troops before the Sun Tay raid in Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
So their mission was to rescue American POWs.
American POWs.
From this heavily guarded camp deep in enemy territory.
Oh, my gosh.
Simons laid it out for them with absolute clarity,
Wow.
leaving no room for doubt.
Right.
And this was crucial
Yeah.
because in high-stakes situations like this, things rarely go exactly according to plan.
That makes total sense because even when the plan falls apart,
Yeah.
having that crystal clear purpose keeps everyone aligned
Exactly.
and focused on what the ultimate goal is.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what is principle number 2? All right, so building on that strong sense of purpose,
Yeah.
the second principle is repetition.
Repetition. Okay.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
We're not just talking about practicing a skill
Right.
over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's about repeatedly applying a proven method for success.
So it's less about rote memorization and more about having
Yes.
a reliable system, a formula that you know is going to work and deliver results.
Precisely.
I can see how that would build confidence
Yes.
and minimize risk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about successful restaurant chains.
Yeah.
Their consistency.
Their systems, yeah.
And their systems are a perfect example of repetition in action.
Repetition in action.
Another fascinating example the audiobook highlights is entrepreneur Joe Cosman.
Joe Cosman. Okay.
He built multiple successful businesses using the same 6-step formula.
Hold on. You're saying he had a 6-step formula that worked for any business?
It's true.
That's hard to believe.
He even tackled products that most people consider dead.
What?
Like he was reviving them. It was like a business necromancer.
A business necromancer.
Okay. I love it.
I know.
Okay, you have to tell me more about the 6-step formula.
We'll dive into those steps a bit later.
Okay.
I promise.
Okay.
But for now, let's stick with these core principles.
Right.
The third principle is speed.
The need for speed.
The need for speed.
Are we getting into like Top Gun territory here?
Well, in this context, speed is about more than just moving quickly.
Okay.
It's about using swift action
Okay.
to gain 2 critical advantages.
Okay.
Surprise
Right.
and time.
And time.
You want to catch your competitor off guard
Okay.
and then use that precious time window
I gotcha.
to achieve your objective before they can even react.
So it's about disrupting their plans and seizing the initiative.
Exactly.
Okay. So do you have any examples of how that played out
Yeah.
in real life?
The book gives a great example from the French and Indian War.
Major Robert Rogers and his Rangers.
Okay.
They were experts in wilderness warfare,
Okay.
and they used their speed and agility
Okay.
to outrun and outmaneuver their pursuers
Got it.
and launch these surprise attacks.
Wow.
Like in one daring raid, Rogers and his men literally outran their pursuers
Wow.
through the wilderness
Jeez.
and then launched this surprise attack on a village,
Wow.
achieving their objective before reinforcements could arrive.
That is amazing.
Okay.
So speed creates surprise.
Yeah.
Which buys you time
Right.
to accomplish your purpose.
Absolutely.
I'm starting to feel like these principles are all like a chain reaction.
Yeah, they build upon each other.
They really do. Okay, so what's next?
The fourth principle is surprise,
Surprise.
and it builds directly on speed.
Okay.
It's not just about catching your competitor off guard. It's
Right.
about exploiting vulnerabilities
Okay.
and concentrating your resources where they least expect it.
I see.
Think of it as like a well-placed judo move,
I like that.
using their own weight against them.
Okay, so you're not just attacking quickly, you're attacking strategically.
Yeah.
Hitting them where it hurts.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. Are there examples of that kind of like strategic surprise
Oh, yeah.
outside of a military context?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The book mentions this great example from politics.
Yeah.
Remember that legendary moment
Yeah.
in the 1988 vice presidential debate when Lloyd Benson
Lloyd Benson. Okay.
completely shut down Dan Quayle with the Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy line?
Oh, that's a classic.
Classic example, right?
Yeah.
Quayle walked right into that trap.
He did. He totally did.
It was a perfectly executed surprise attack.
It shifted the whole momentum of that debate.
It completely shifted the momentum
Oh, yeah.
of the debate.
It's amazing how these apply,
right?
even outside of military.
Absolutely. And here's another great example from the military.
Okay.
Operation Claymore,
Operation Claymore.
a British raid on the Lofoten Islands during World War II.
Okay.
Now, the Germans
Yeah.
were so convinced
Okay.
that the British wouldn't attack that location
Okay.
that the commandos were basically able to just stroll
What?
into a seaplane base and wreak havoc.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
It's like straight out of a movie.
It really is.
It is.
Okay. I'm ready for principle number 5.
All right, principle number 5 is security.
Security.
Might seem a little less glamorous
Okay.
than speed or surprise,
Right.
but it's absolutely crucial.
Okay,
It's
right.
all about protecting your information,
Yeah.
preventing your competitors
Yeah.
from gaining any insight into
know.
your plans or capabilities.
Yeah, if they know what you're going to do, they can prepare for it.
Exactly. Forewarned is forearmed.
Forewarned is forearmed,
Right.
as they say.
And the book highlights a tragic example of what happens when security fails.
Like,
Operation Jubilee.
Operation Jubilee.
The Dieppe raid in 1942.
Oh, yeah, that one did go so well.
It was a disaster.
Yeah.
The Germans knew the Allies were coming,
Oh, geez.
and the result was heavy casualties.
Wow.
It really underscores how important it is to maintain secrecy,
Yeah.
especially in these high-stakes operations.
Yeah. So it's not just about being brave and bold.
Right.
It's about being smart and strategic,
You got it.
about protecting your information.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's wrap up this section with principle number 6.
Right.
What's the final piece of the puzzle?
The final principle is simplicity.
Simplicity.
It might seem counterintuitive,
Okay.
especially when we're talking about complex operations,
Right.
but it's all about minimizing the number of things
Okay.
that can go wrong.
Right.
The more moving parts you have in a plan,
Yeah.
the greater the chance
Yeah.
something's going to break down.
Right.
The book actually uses the example of the failed Iran hostage rescue mission in 1980.
Oh, right.
The plan was so complex,
Okay.
it relied on so many things,
Yeah.
aligning perfectly, it was almost doomed from the start.
Right.
And this actually led to the creation of U.S. Special Operations Command,
Oh, wow.
which brought together all these different branches of special forces
Wow.
under one umbrella.
So even in failure,
Mm-hmm.
there's an opportunity to learn,
To learn,
adapt,
adapt,
simplify,
simplify.
streamline.
Absolutely.
It's a good reminder that complexity can sometimes be the enemy of success,
It can be.
especially in those high-pressure situations.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've got our 6 principles
We do.
of commando success,
Yes.
purpose, repetition, speed,
Yeah.
surprise, security, and simplicity.
You got it.
These are still pretty abstract, though.
Wow.
How do they actually play out in the real world beyond the military?
That's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
The audiobook goes on to explore
Yeah.
how these principles translate
Okay.
into the business world.
All right, I'm hooked.
I knew you would be.
Let's dive into those business commandos next.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've laid all this groundwork
Right.
with the 6 principles of commando success.
The 6 principles, yeah.
Now, I'm curious about how they actually translate into, like, building and leading a team
Right.
in, like, a business context.
It's fascinating because
Yeah?
building a commando team,
Yeah.
whether it's in the military or in business,
Mm-hmm.
requires a very specific approach.
Okay.
You need individuals who not only possess the right skills,
Right.
but who thrive on challenge
Mm-hmm.
and commitment.
I imagine not everyone is cut out for this kind of work.
Exactly.
Like, some people just aren't wired
Right.
for that commando mindset.
Right. The audiobook actually outlines 3 key stages in
Right.
building a commando team.
Right.
Locating and recruiting,
Got it.
screening and selecting and training and motivating.
Okay.
And each stage is designed to identify and cultivate
Hmm.
individuals who are not only capable,
Right.
but deeply committed to the goals of the team.
Okay, let's break that down. So stage 1 is all about finding potential business commandos.
Yeah.
How do you even begin to look for people
Right.
who are drawn to this kind of, like, demanding work?
Right. It's not your typical job posting.
It's not.
Right.
So what do you do?
Well, it starts with recognizing that true commandos are volunteers.
Volunteers.
They're not driven primarily by money
Okay.
or recognition,
Right.
but by a deeper desire to push their limits
Mm-hmm.
and achieve extraordinary results.
So tapping into that, like, intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, exactly. That fire in the belly
Yeah.
that makes them want to tackle the impossible.
So how do you attract those individuals
Mm-hmm.
in a business setting?
Yeah.
Do you put out a call for, like, daredevils and risk takers?
It's less about labels
Okay.
and more about honesty.
Okay.
You need to be upfront about the challenges,
Right.
the demands, the long hours, the commitment required.
Yeah, don't sugarcoat it.
Don't sugarcoat it. The book even suggests using an ad
Really?
that specifically calls for business commandos,
Oh.
emphasizing the difficult assignments
Wow.
and demanding work conditions.
That's interesting.
Right.
But you weed out a lot of candidates right there.
You do, and that's the point.
Right.
You're not looking for just anyone.
Right.
You're looking for those individuals
Hmm.
who are excited by the prospect of
Yeah.
tackling tough challenges.
Okay, so it's a self-selection process.
Absolutely.
You put it out there,
Yeah,
the right people will come.
exactly.
Okay, so you found your pool of potential commandos.
Right.
Now it's on to stage 2,
To stage 2,
screening and selecting.
screening and selecting. This is where you really separate the wheat from the chaff.
Okay, separate the wheat from the chaff.
It requires a rigorous selection process
Okay.
to identify individuals who not only have the skills,
Right.
but the temperament and the mental fortitude
Yeah.
to thrive in this kind of fast-paced,
Right.
high-pressure environment.
So it's about more than just checking boxes on a resume.
Exactly. You need to dig deeper. You need to understand their motivations, their values,
Yeah.
their ability to handle pressure.
So in-depth interviews.
Absolutely.
And not just with like HR, but with senior managers
Exactly.
who are actually going to be working with these people.
You want to get a feel for their character, their drive, their commitment to achieving goals.
Okay, so it's really getting a sense
Right.
of who these people are
Exactly.
at their core.
You got it.
All right, so you've assembled your team.
Yeah.
You've put them through this demanding selection process.
Right.
Now it's time for stage 3.
Stage 3.
Training and motivating.
Training and motivating. This is where leadership
Yeah.
becomes absolutely critical.
Okay.
It's not just about giving orders or delegating tasks.
Right.
It's about inspiring and empowering them
Dope.
to take ownership.
Yeah.
You need to create a culture
Mm-hmm.
that fosters this deep sense of commitment and shared purpose.
So it's about more than just technical training.
Yes.
It's about cultivating that commando spirit,
It's exactly.
the sense of purpose, the camaraderie
Yes.
that drives them to go above and beyond.
You got it. The audiobook actually challenges this common misconception
Right.
that pay is the top motivator.
Okay.
Now, while compensation is important,
Right. Of course.
it's not what truly drives these individuals.
So if it's not about the money,
Right.
what is it about?
Right.
What makes these business commandos tick?
Well, the book highlights several key motivators.
Okay.
And they're surprisingly consistent
Okay.
across military and business contexts.
Right.
One is the thrill of the challenge.
The thrill of the chat.
That satisfaction
Yeah.
of pushing their limits
Yeah.
and achieving what others deem impossible.
Yeah. I can relate to that feeling of satisfaction.
You get it.
When you overcome a challenge, you're like, yes.
Exactly.
Like that.
It's that adrenaline rush,
Yeah.
that sense of accomplishment
Yeah.
that comes from conquering a seemingly insurmountable obstacle.
Right. Are there other motivators at play here too?
Yeah, another key factor is pride of belonging.
Okay. Pride of belonging.
So that feeling of being part of this elite group,
Okay.
a team of high achievers
Mm-hmm.
who are all striving for a common goal.
Yeah. So it's like being part of a special forces unit,
Exactly.
even in the business world.
And it's incredibly powerful.
Okay.
Now, the book also emphasizes
Yeah.
the importance of ongoing development.
Okay.
So commandos are constantly seeking to improve their skills,
Right.
learn new things,
Okay.
push their boundaries.
So it's not enough to just maintain their edge.
Right. They need to constantly sharpen
They need to get sharper.
and expand their capabilities.
Right. So they're becoming even more effective.
Exactly. And this requires a culture
Yeah.
that supports continuous learning,
Right.
encourages experimentation,
Experimentation.
and rewards innovation.
So fostering a culture of learning and growth
Right.
and constant improvement.
Absolutely.
And this ties back to the 6 principles
It does.
that we talked about before.
Yes.
Purpose, repetition, speed, surprise, security, simplicity.
They all work together.
They all work together.
Right?
These principles aren't just individual guidelines. They are the foundation
A foundation.
for building a commando culture.
Absolutely.
It's a way of thinking
Yeah.
and operating
Right.
that permeates the entire team.
You got it.
Okay, so we've covered building a team.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious about the leadership aspect.
Okay.
How do you inspire a team of business commandos to take action
Right.
and achieve these seemingly impossible goals?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The audiobook dives into several
Okay.
key leadership practices
Right.
that are essential for guiding commandos.
Yeah.
And one of the most powerful
Yeah.
is this concept of daring the impossible.
Now we're talking.
I know.
Tell me more about this daring the impossible concept.
It's about setting audacious goals,
Okay.
pushing beyond conventional wisdom,
Yeah.
and instilling this belief that anything is possible if you have the courage and the commitment to pursue it.
So you're finding that inner commando,
Yes.
that spark of
Yes.
courage and determination.
Yeah, it is.
That allows you to push beyond your perceived limits
Yeah.
and achieve what you once thought was impossible.
Exactly. The audiobook shares this incredible story
Okay.
of Operation Entebbe,
Operation Entebbe.
the daring Israeli raid to rescue hostages
Hostages. Okay.
from a hijacked plane in Uganda.
Oh, wow.
I mean, this was a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
A seemingly impossible mission.
Okay.
They flew thousands of miles, landed in enemy territory,
Wow.
and rescued the hostages in this lightning-fast operation.
That sounds like a movie.
It does,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it perfectly embodies that daring the impossible spirit.
They faced immense challenges.
Huge challenges.
But they never wavered.
They didn't. Their commitment to the mission never wavered.
You ever wavered? Okay.
And the book highlights how that same spirit can be applied in the business world.
In the business world? Okay.
Take Joe Cosman, for example.
Joe Cosman, the entrepreneur.
The entrepreneur we mentioned earlier.
Yeah. He was the one with the potato guns.
He was the one with the potato guns.
Right.
Right? He repeatedly launched businesses
Okay.
in what seemed like doomed products categories and turned them into massive successes.
He saw potential where other people just saw failure.
He didn't let conventional wisdom deter him.
Right. He was like, I'm going to make this work.
He embraced the challenge.
Right.
He found creative solutions.
Yeah.
And he ultimately achieved the extraordinary...
Okay, so it's not just about being fearless.
Yeah.
It's about being strategic.
Strategic.
And using those challenges to fuel your creativity, your innovation, your determination to succeed.
You got it.
Do you have any other examples of this mindset in action?
Absolutely. Another powerful example is Clarence Kelly Johnson.
Clarence Kelly Johnson.
The mastermind behind Lockheed's Skunk Works.
Right, Skunk Works, I've heard that name.
You have.
What does they do?
They developed some of the most iconic aircraft in history,
Right.
including the SR-71 Blackbird.
Oh, wow.
One of their most impressive feats was building a jet fighter prototype.
Okay.
In just 6 months.
6 months? That's unheard of.
I mean,
Most aircraft development takes years.
years, if not decades.
Decades, yeah.
But Johnson and his team delivered.
They delivered, wow.
They threw out the rule book.
Cool.
They embraced unconventional approaches.
Right.
And they redefined what was possible
Okay.
in aircraft design.
So 143 days,
143 days.
they had a flyable prototype.
That's incredible.
That's mind-blowing.
It is.
So it's clear that daring the impossible is about more than just setting ambitious goals.
Yes, it's about having the courage
Yeah.
to challenge the status quo, to think outside the box,
Yeah.
to find those creative solutions.
To find those creative solutions that other people might just dismiss.
Absolutely. It's about throwing the rule book away,
Throwing the rule book away.
embracing innovation,
Yeah.
and finding those unconventional approaches.
And you were saying before,
Yeah.
like, commandos aren't bound by tradition.
No, they're not.
Or bureaucracy.
They're driven by the need
Yeah.
to find the most effective solution,
Right.
even if it means breaking the rules.
And I want to be clear here.
Yes.
It's not about, like, reckless disregard for rules.
No.
It's about understanding the underlying principles.
Right.
And finding the most effective way to apply them.
Exactly.
Sometimes that means bending or breaking conventional norms.
You got it.
So it's about being adaptable,
Yeah.
finding solutions that fit the situation,
Right.
rather than forcing a square peg into a round hole.
Absolutely. Are there any historical examples
Yeah.
of this rule-breaking approach
Yeah.
leading to success?
That's what I want to hear about.
There are actually quite a few.
Okay.
One fascinating example from World War II
Okay.
involves Colonel Philip Cochrane
Coral Phil Cochrane. Okay.
and the use of gliders to transport boats.
Wait, gliders, those things that just kind of float through the air?
Yeah, those ones.
I'm having a hard time picturing that in a war zone.
I know. It was a brilliant,
Uh-oh.
albeit unconventional solution.
Okay.
So the Chindits,
Dude, that's
who were fighting deep behind Japanese lines,
great.
they needed to get boats across a river
Okay, to attack.
to attack a Japanese position,
Okay.
but conventional transport was impossible.
Right.
So Cochrane came up with this idea
Okay.
of using gliders to carry the boats,
Right.
landing them in this jungle clearing.
So they just kind of landed these gliders?
Yeah, they landed the gliders
With boats.
Yes.
With the boat.
in a jungle.
It's pretty amazing.
How did they get the gliders back?
Well, they devised this daring extraction technique
Okay.
where C-47 transport planes
Okay.
would swoop down,
Yeah.
snag the gliders with a hook,
What?
and tow them back to base.
That's incredible.
Isn't that amazing?
And this is so creative.
Yeah.
So it's not just about breaking the rules.
It's about finding creative solutions
Exactly.
that exploit limitations.
You got it. And the audiobook emphasizes that this kind of innovation
Mm-hmm.
requires a willingness to stay informed,
Okay.
global trends,
Right.
to be aware of these emerging technologies,
Yeah.
ideas,
Yeah.
and to constantly seek out new possibilities.
So you can't just rest on your laurels.
No, you can't.
You have to constantly look for ways to improve,
Yes,
innovate, adapt.
absolutely.
Are there any examples of companies that failed to adapt
Oh, yeah.
and ultimately paid the price?
The book uses the example of picket slide rules.
Picket slide rules.
Now, these were once the gold standard for engineers,
Okay.
but they were quickly rendered obsolete
Okay.
by the emergence of electronic calculators.
Wow.
Right? It's a great reminder
Yeah.
that even the most successful companies
Yeah.
can become complacent,
Complacent.
clinging to outdated methods while the world moves on.
Right. They're like, this is how we've always done it.
Ex-
And then all of a sudden,
Everything changes.
everything changes. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a sobering thought.
it is.
So how do you foster that culture of innovation
Right.
in a business setting?
Well, the book highlights several key factors.
Okay.
First, you need to cultivate a culture that embraces the unusual
Okay.
and rewards creative solutions.
So you're creating an environment where people feel safe to experiment,
Absolutely.
to take risks,
Yes.
to challenge the status quo
You got it.
without fear of reprisal.
Exactly. And it's about rewarding those who come up
Yeah.
with these creative solutions, even if they're not immediately successful.
So failure is seen as a learning opportunity,
Yes.
not a reason to give up.
Exactly.
And you're instilling this belief
Yeah.
that there is always a way.
Always a way.
The
Yeah.
book offers some great examples,
Okay.
like the invention of silly putty,
Silly putty.
a seemingly useless goo
Right.
that turned into a global
We
phenomenon.
really did.
Right. I had some as a kid.
I know.
Yeah. And the success of Arnold Fornashue's ice cream cone.
The ice cream cone.
Right. A simple but brilliant solution
Right.
to a logistical problem.
It revolutionized an industry.
I love those examples. It shows that innovation can come from the most unexpected places
It can.
and from the people who are willing to see the potential
Absolutely.
in what other people might dismiss.
You got it.
Okay.
And it highlights this crucial aspect
Oh.
of commando leadership
Yeah.
being where the action is.
Okay, now we're talking about leadership in action,
Right.
not from the sideline.
Not from the sidelines.
Okay, what does that look like in a business context?
Well, it's about being present,
Okay.
being involved,
Mhm.
sharing both the risks and the triumphs with your team.
Okay.
It's about leading from the front,
Yeah.
not from behind a desk.
So you're a hands-on leader.
Absolutely.
You're not just delegating tasks.
Yes.
You're actively participating. You're inspiring your team by your own actions and commitment.
Exactly. The book gives this powerful example
Okay.
from the Vietnam War.
Okay.
Lieutenant Joseph Carey,
Lieutenant Joseph
a
Carey.
young Navy SEAL officer
Okay.
who led his team on this daring raid
Okay.
to capture enemy leaders.
Okay.
Now, he was badly wounded,
Oh, wow.
but he remained in command,
Oh, my God.
ensuring the mission's success and the safety of his team.
That's incredible. He didn't let his own injuries
He did not.
prevent him from leading his team to victory.
And while the business world may not involve physical combat,
Right.
the principle remains the same.
Yeah.
Effective commando leaders
Yeah.
are those who are present, engaged,
Mm-hmm.
and willing to share both the burdens and the triumphs.
Burdens and the triumphs.
The Vandy team.
And you mentioned before,
Yeah.
Herb Kelleher,
Herb Kelleher.
the legendary founder of Southwest Airlines.
Exactly. He was known for his hands-on approach.
Yeah, wasn't he out there like with the employees?
He was.
The passengers,
Yes.
loading bags,
Loading bags.
serving drinks on flights.
He was a
know-
master of management by wandering around.
Management by wandering around. I love that.
Right.
So you're out there, you're seeing the challenges firsthand.
It's hard.
You're inspiring your team through action
Yes.
rather than just issuing directives from a distance.
You got it.
You're in the trenches with your team.
You are. And it's also about sharing both the defeats
Yeah.
and the victories.
Right.
The book uses the example of Ken Iverson,
Nick Iverson.
who built Nucor Corporation into this steel industry giant.
Okay.
When the industry faced this major crisis, Iverson shared the pain with his employees.
Wow.
He took a significant pay cut himself,
Wow.
and he refused to lay off a single worker.
That's powerful.
It is.
It's really showing a shared commitment.
Yes.
You're showing your team that you're in it with them through thick and thin.
Exactly. It's leading by example.
Leading by example.
And that kind of commitment fosters loyalty, trust, and that unwavering dedication.
Yeah.
That's essential for achieving these extraordinary results.
Wow. This has been an incredible deep dive.
Yeah.
We've covered so much ground from defining special operations leadership
Yes.
to unpacking these core principles.
The core principles.
And exploring how those principles can be applied
Right.
in both military and business contexts.
Absolutely.
I'm starting to see how these principles can be valuable
Right.
for
And it's-
anyone
For anyone.
facing a challenge,
Yes.
no matter what their field is.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
These principles of special operations leadership are not limited to elite military units
Yeah.
or daring entrepreneurs.
Right.
They're relevant to anyone facing a daunting challenge,
Yeah.
anyone seeking to achieve the extraordinary,
So it's about finding that inner commando,
finding that inner commando.
that spark of courage, innovation,
Yes.
an unwavering commitment
Unwavering commitment.
that allows us to push beyond our limits
Yeah.
and achieve what we once thought was impossible.
You got it.
So embracing the challenge,
Yeah.
throwing out the rule book
Throwing out the rule book
when necessary,
when necessary.
leading from the front,
Leading from the front.
inspiring those around us
Yes.
to achieve greatness.
To achieve greatness.
I love it.
Me too.
This has been an incredible conversation.
It has been.
I'm sure our listeners are feeling so inspired
Yeah.
to tackle their own impossible challenges.
Their own impossible challenge.
We've talked about purpose, speed, innovation, and even like throwing out the rule book
Right.
when necessary. But before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a bit more about that last point you made,
Okay.
being where the action is.
Being where the action is.
What does that actually look like
Right.
for leaders who want to cultivate this commando mindset
Right.
within their teams?
It's about more than just giving orders or delegating tasks.
Okay.
It's about being present, being engaged, and being willing to share both the risks and the rewards with your team.
So it's not enough to just set a vision and then expect your team to execute it
Right.
without your active involvement.
You got to be in it with them.
You got to be in it with them.
Yeah.
Okay. And we talk about Herb Kelleher,
Herb Kelleher.
the founder of Southwest Airlines.
Yeah.
He's a great example of this.
He is a great example.
Like, he was known for his willingness to roll up his sleeves
Absolutely.
and work alongside his employees.
Yeah, he was a master of what they call management by wandering around.
Management by wandering around.
He believed in being visible and accessible
Oh,
to employees at all levels of the organization.
yeah, like he was often seen loading bags.
Yeah, loading bags, serving drinks,
Serving drinks. Wow.
even dressing up in costumes to boost morale.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It sends such a powerful message when leaders are willing to, like, get their hands dirty
He does.
alongside their team.
Shows commitment,
It shows commitment.
shared sacrifice,
Yeah.
which is incredibly motivating.
It really is. And it's not just about sharing in the good times.
No, it's not.
It's also about being present during the tough times.
Yes,
Acknowledging setbacks and working together
absolutely.
to overcome obstacles.
All came together, yeah.
And I think you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
the example of Ken Iverson,
Ken Iverson,
the CEO of Nucor Steel,
Nucor Steel, that's right.
who, during a major industry crisis,
Mm-hmm.
he took a significant pay cut
He did.
rather than lay off a single worker.
He believed in his team.
He believed in his team.
Absolutely.
That's such a powerful example of leading by example.
It is.
It demonstrates a real commitment
Right.
to shared sacrifice and a belief
Yes.
in the value of his team,
A belief in his people.
a belief in his people.
That's right.
Wow. So as we wrap up this deep dive
Yeah.
into the world of special operations leadership, what is like the one key takeaway
The key take
you want our listeners to remember
is that the principles of commando leadership
are not limited to the battlefield or the boardroom.
right.
They're applicable to anyone
And
facing a challenge, anyone seeking to achieve something extraordinary.
so it's about cultivating that inner commando,
Yeah,
that spark of courage, innovation, and unwavering commitment
absolutely.
that allows us to push beyond our perceived limits.
You got it.
So it's about embracing challenges, thinking creatively, leading by example,
Yes.
believing in your team,
Right.
and most importantly, believing in yourself
Yes.
and your ability to accomplish amazing things.
It's about looking at those impossible challenges
Yeah.
and saying, bring it on.
Bring it on. I love that this has been such an insightful and inspiring conversation.
Yeah.
I'm sure our listeners are feeling energized and ready to tackle their own possible challenges.
I hope so.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.